On the bustling avenue, where mirrored buildings reflect the vastness of the blue sky, Isabella Mendez walked with purposeful strides. Her high heels sounded like a precise metronome, marking her accelerated pace. Each step seemed to carry a story of struggle and perseverance, shaped by the journey she had taken to reach the top of the tech industry. At 32 years old, with a posture that radiated confidence, Isabella was the CEO of one of the largest companies in the country, Innovatech Solutions, and a symbol of female success in an environment still largely dominated by men. She had overcome social and professional barriers, smashing stereotypes and demonstrating that talent and determination know no bounds. Her appearance also reflected this resolve. The brown hair, neatly styled in a sophisticated bun, complemented her tailored suit, making her seem almost untouchable amidst the gleam of the buildings around her, as if nothing could shake her self-assurance. Yet beneath that impeccable demeanor lay memories of a humble childhood, of struggles and uncertainties that still accompanied her, making her both more human and vulnerable. After all, she knew that success does not erase the scars of the past. Among the many thoughts occupying her mind that day was Rodrigo Almeida, her boyfriend, with whom she had been in a relationship for almost a year. Rodrigo was a lawyer, and like Isabella, he carried an aura of success and prestige. He was away on a work trip, which made Isabella feel somewhat lonely in that vast city. They had built a relationship based on mutual respect and understanding, and Isabella saw in Rodrigo someone with whom she could share both the joys and difficulties of life. Upon arriving at the office at the top of one of Innovatech's buildings, Isabella was greeted by Sophia, her assistant, who handed her the day's agenda, and amidst commitments and reports, casually mentioned that Rodrigo's family was eager to meet her. Although she always projected an image of an unshakable woman, Isabella felt a chill in her stomach upon hearing that. Meeting Rodrigo's family was a significant step, and she knew that despite all her achievements, insecurities were still a part of who she was. Her humble past, her journey of overcoming obstacles, and the many sacrifices she had made echoed in her mind. Pensive, Isabella made an impulsive and surprising decision, even for herself. She looked at Sophia with a determined smile and said, "Cancel all my appointments for the next few days. I'm going to pay a surprise visit to Rodrigo's family." Sophia, although surprised by the sudden decision, nodded in agreement, trusting Isabella's intuition. But Isabella wanted something more. She decided that this visit would have a special touch. Instead of presenting herself as the powerful CEO everyone knew, she would do the opposite. She would pass as an ordinary person, without status, without the expensive clothes and impeccable makeup she usually wore. It was a bold idea, but at that moment she felt this was exactly what she needed to do. After all, if she were treated well without the external signs of success, she would know she was welcomed for who she truly was. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. After all, it would be a test not only for her, but for Rodrigo's family, who she believed had a solid economic situation and a certain social vanity. That same afternoon, Isabella swapped her sophisticated suit for a simple pair of jeans and a white t-shirt. She removed her makeup, let down her elegant bun, and tied her hair in a carefree ponytail. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. It was like revisiting a version of herself she hadn't seen in years, a young woman with ambitions, filled with dreams, who still believed in the power of simplicity. With her bag packed and a mix of anxiety and excitement, Isabella hit the road toward Campos do Jordão, where Rodrigo's family lived. The 3-hour journey gave her time to think, and with each passing kilometer, her determination to follow through with this unusual plan grew. As the towering buildings of the city gave way to green fields and more tranquil landscapes, she reflected on the true meaning of this trip. She was ready to momentarily shed the role of a powerful and successful woman to become an ordinary person, someone who, without the weight of status, could observe, absorb, and understand the other side of life. This was a side she knew well, but had distanced herself from for years. As the journey progressed, Isabella's thoughts about reconnecting with this simpler side of life mingled with memories of a challenging childhood. The small towns of the countryside, the corner shops, the people strolling slowly down the streets reminded her of the sacrifices she made to get to where she was, and that fueled her even more. Perhaps this experience would be more than just a test for Rodrigo's family. It could serve as a symbolic return to her own roots. At the end of the trip, Isabella arrived in the charming town of Campos do Jordão, which had an almost magical air, with its architecture reminiscent of European villages, a pleasant climate, and streets lined with trees that seemed to welcome visitors. She followed the directions Rodrigo had mentioned once and found the Almeida family home. It was an impressive mansion, with well-kept gardens and a facade that shouted sophistication and status. As she approached the gate and rang the bell, she heard a woman's voice through the intercom. "Almeida residence, how can I help you?" Isabella took a deep breath, feeling the mix of apprehension and excitement intensifying. It was time to step into a new role. "Good afternoon. I'm a friend of Rodrigo. I came to make a surprise visit." After a brief pause, the gate opened with a soft buzz. Isabella walked along the stone path to the entrance of the house, admiring the meticulousness of the gardens. The door was opened by Marcia Almeida, an elegant middle-aged woman with an imposing posture, who looked Isabella up and down with a scrutinizing gaze. Marcia's expression quickly shifted from curiosity to disdain as she noticed Isabella's simple attire. "Oh, so you must be the new maid that Rodrigo mentioned he would hire," Marcia said in a cold, slightly dismissive tone. Taken aback by the assumption, Isabella hesitated for a moment. She hadn't imagined being mistaken for a maid, but at that moment she realized that this misunderstanding could be a golden opportunity to understand the true character of the family. Without correcting Marcia, Isabella replied calmly, "Yes, ma'am. Would you like me to start helping in the kitchen?" Translation. Marcia nodded with a vague gesture, already turning her back and heading into another room. Isabella was then led into a spacious kitchen, where she met Camila, a young woman with a shy smile who seemed focused on her tasks. "Camila, show the new assistant the chores and where everything is," Marcia ordered before leaving. As Camila showed Isabella the details of the kitchen and explained the household routine, the two exchanged glances that conveyed an immediate empathy. Camila, perhaps due to her shyness or her attention to detail, spoke in a low voice and wore an expression that seemed to reflect a certain resignation. Isabella, who had faced tough times herself, recognized something familiar and admirable in the young woman. Watching Camila in silence, Isabella sensed an untold story there. In each of the young woman's gestures, in the contained way she spoke, there was a familiarity that Isabella knew well. The caution of someone who had learned to protect herself in the workplace, especially in a household where respect was a rarity. Throughout that first afternoon, Isabella helped Camila organize the kitchen, prepare dinner, and set the table for the family. Each task was an opportunity to observe more closely the dynamics of the household. As she folded linen napkins and arranged silverware, Isabella noticed Marcia passing in the background without even a glance of approval or gratitude for the work being done. Marcia moved through the house with the haughty posture of someone who considered everything around her a reflection of her own importance, a status unshakable that was confirmed not only by material possessions but by the power she wielded over those around her. When the staff passed by, it was as if they were invisible, and the few glances she directed at them carried more judgment than any words. Carlos, Marcia's husband, walked through the kitchen at one point, casting an almost indifferent look at Isabella and Camila. He seemed completely absorbed in his own worries, as if household tasks were something distant from his reality. In his hands, he held a thick book titled Business Ethics, which made Isabella raise her eyebrows slightly. The irony of the scene was undeniable. Here was a man who prided himself on his company's social responsibility, but treated the household staff with coldness and detachment. While helping Camila wash the dishes, Isabella broke the silence and asked gently, trying not to be intrusive, "Have you been here long, Camila?" Camilla sighed, offering a slight, humorless smile. "It's been 5 years. I started right after I finished high school. I needed to help my family and, well, opportunities around here are few." Isabella felt a pang of empathy. Camilla's story seemed in a way to reflect her own, although their lives had taken different paths. "It must be hard sometimes," Isabella commented almost absently, as if sharing a thought. Camilla nodded, averting her gaze to the dishes she was washing. "You get used to it," she replied, in a resigned tone. However, there was a sadness in the young woman's eyes that Isabella recognized well. It was the look of someone who had learned to contain their dreams, perhaps having believed they would never have the chance to realize them. When Marcia re-entered the kitchen to ask for tea, Isabella watched the interaction closely. Camilla almost jumped, quickly grabbing the tray and preparing the tea with agility, while Marcia stood with her arms crossed, visibly impatient. Isabella, who had been accustomed to being treated with respect and deference for years, now witnessed what it was like to be invisible, reduced to a role that, in the eyes of that family, deserved no recognition. At night, as she settled into a small bed that Camilla had prepared for her in a little room near the kitchen, Isabella reflected on the day's experiences in the modest space. It had a single window from which she could see the garden illuminated by the moon. There, alone in the silence, she contemplated the weight of judgment and disdain that until that moment she had managed to leave behind. Yet, in a way, this return to her roots gave her clarity. She realized she would live this situation to the end, experiencing the treatment, absorbing every detail, every word and gesture, as if she wanted to learn something profound about the layers of life she had left behind to achieve success. In the following days, the routine repeated itself, with Isabella and Camilla working side by side on daily tasks. Each day, Isabella became more involved in the simplicity of that environment and closer to Camilla, listening to her stories, her dreams, and most importantly, her frustrations. Camilla shared that she wished to study business administration, but the chances were scarce. Isabella listened with a growing sense of identification, recalling the days when she herself, still without the slightest idea of how she would get there, nourished the dream of being the master of her own destiny. The bond between the two blossomed genuinely, and Isabella knew that after her departure, she didn't want to leave Camilla alone with her unfulfilled dreams. Isabella silently decided she would do something to help her friend carve out a better path, one that went beyond the walls of that house. However, she knew that for now she needed to maintain her disguise, as there was still much to learn about that family, and perhaps even about herself. Thus, while observing every detail, every interaction of the Almeida family, Isabella remained in the role of an employee, but with her heart set on a greater mission. Throughout the days she lived as a servant in the Almeida household, Isabella had the opportunity to deeply observe the dynamics of that family, especially those of Marcia, Carlos, and Camilla, figures who shaped the atmosphere of the house in distinct ways. Each had a unique role, and their attitudes and personalities revealed much about how that family viewed the world, and particularly the people around them. Marcia Almeida, the matriarch of the family, was a woman of striking presence and rigid posture. Her personality seemed to reflect a desire to maintain order and status within her home. Elegantly and impeccably dressed at any hour of the day, Marcia exhibited a vanity that went beyond physical appearance. For her, everything around her, from the luxurious furniture in the house to the people who worked there, seemed to exist to reinforce her own worth. Isabella noticed that Marcia treated everything and everyone with a certain detachment, as if the staff were merely functional pieces devoid of personality or feelings. There was an almost silent ritual in her way of commanding the house. Marcia rarely gave direct orders. Her tone of voice and glances were enough for everyone to know what she desired. She expected everything to be impeccable, as if it were an extension of her own image. Any flaw was seen as a personal affront, and Isabella quickly realized that Marcia did not hesitate to express her displeasure when something fell short of her standard of perfection. The arrogance with which she addressed Isabella and Camilla was difficult to endure, yet it was revealing. For Marcia, respect seemed to be a privilege reserved only for those who shared her social status. Carlos Almeida, the patriarch, was more distant, but his behavior made it clear that he shared Marcia's values. Carlos was a reserved and introspective man, which could have been seen as discretion, but in the context of the house, it felt more like indifference to everything that was not directly related to his own comfort. He spent much of his time in the office, immersed in books and documents, as if the outside world did not exist. When he interacted with the family, his tone was always formal, and he maintained a superficial relationship even with his children. Isabella soon realized that Carlos held a hierarchical and authoritarian view of human relationships. The respect he demanded seemed to stem from power and wealth, rather than from a genuine exchange between people. He was the type of man who believed in a place for everything and everything in its place, including for people. His indifference to the work of the employees was clear. On several occasions, Isabella saw him dismiss Camilla's efforts with a look of superiority that irritated her deeply. He liked to see himself as an ethical man, always surrounded by books on leadership and morality. But the irony of his attitude did not go unnoticed by Isabella. She wondered if he even recognized the difference between the principles he preached and the cold way he treated those outside his social circle. Camila, Rodrigo's sister, on the other hand, was a surprisingly different figure. Young and well-mannered, Camila bore no resemblance to her parents. She had a discreet and sweet demeanor, but also seemed burdened by an inexplicable melancholy. In various moments, while Isabella did tasks alongside Camila, the two exchanged knowing smiles, and Isabella felt there was something about the young woman that made her want to know her better. Camila seemed out of place in that rigid house, as if she felt she did not belong to a world where appearance and status were more important than emotions and humanity. As Isabella conversed with Camila, she discovered that Camila had a great passion for literature and music, but rarely found the space to live out those passions in such a structured environment. The family, especially the mother, expected her to follow a safe path that would maintain the Almeida image and prestige, but Camila desired something more. It was clear that, despite her position, she knew how to respect the efforts of others. On many occasions, while Marcia and Carlos made a point of ignoring Isabella and Camila, their daughter always exchanged kind words with the two, showing interest and consideration. Finally, there was Rodrigo, who, although absent due to a business trip, was constantly present in Isabella's conversations and thoughts. Hearing mentions of Rodrigo, she realized that his relationship with the family was marked by a series of expectations and pressures. Rodrigo seemed to be the exception to the rule, a son who had built his life with empathy and respect, but who, at the same time, did not see the coldness that permeated the house where he grew up. His gentle and understanding nature was what attracted Isabella the most, and she wondered how much he knew about his parents' true behavior. As the days passed, Isabella's time with Rodrigo's family revealed much more than she had imagined. Camila's silence, Carlos's coldness, and Marcia's indifference were portraits of a home where values were dictated by appearance and power rather than respect and consideration for others. Seeing from within, Isabella understood that it was not merely a matter of a lack of kindness, but a deeply rooted view that those who did not share the same social status were inherently inferior. For her, each moment there was a lesson, a teaching of empathy and understanding. At the same time, that coexistence was awakening in her the need not just to observe, but to do something so that the experience would have a greater purpose. Isabella's first days in the Almeida household brought a series of situations where she experienced the cold and sometimes humiliating treatment that Marcia reserved for those she considered inferior. The simple fact that she had been mistaken for a maid upon arriving at Rodrigo's house had already given Isabella a first impression of Marcia's personality, but that was just the beginning. As time went on, Marcia's behavior became even more severe, especially toward Isabella and Camilla, the young maid who had worked in the house for years. Marcia seemed to make a point of keeping her distance, using direct words and critical looks that made it clear that, in her view, these women were there to serve and did not deserve her respect or consideration. Isabella observed how Marcia ran the house, maintaining an appearance of perfection and control. Any mistake, no matter how small, was quickly noted and pointed out, as if Marcia were always ready to criticize. On one occasion, after Isabella finished cleaning the living room, Marcia ran her finger over a piece of furniture and, seeing it spotless, cast a reproachful glance and murmured, "Finally, a decent cleaning." That veiled criticism instead of a compliment showed how willing she was to belittle the work of others, keeping everyone under the pressure of her difficult-to-earn approval. Isabella realized that Marcia used the work of others as a way to reaffirm her own superiority. Marcia's arrogance was a constant test of patience. Although Isabella was used to being treated with respect and deference in her position as CEO, she now felt firsthand what it meant to be invisible to someone who saw the people around her only as tools for comfort. On several occasions, Marcia made a point of ignoring her, speaking about Isabella to Camilla as if she weren't there. Once, while Camilla was preparing afternoon tea, Marcia commented, "These new girls don't have much talent, but in time they learn." Isabella bit her tongue, resisting the urge to respond. She knew that to truly understand the situation, she needed to maintain the role she had assumed. Carlos, for his part, although more distant, also contributed to the atmosphere of indifference and disdain. He rarely spoke to Isabella, and when he did, it was in a condescending manner. One day, while Isabella was cleaning Carlos's office, she found herself drawn to the books on his shelf, many of them about business ethics and social responsibility. The contrast between the content of the books and his attitude toward employees was striking. Carlos surprised her by noticing her interest and commented dismissively, "Interested in reading, girl? I'm not sure you'd understand these concepts, but it's nice to see someone with curiosity that goes beyond gossip or social media." Isabella felt her blood boil at his remark, but kept her composure. "I believe you would be surprised by what people can understand when given the opportunity," she replied calmly, concealing her indignation. Carlos seemed taken aback, but soon dismissed her response with a sarcastic smile, turning his back without giving much importance to what she had said. Isabella stored that moment in her memory, reflecting on the hypocrisy of a man who prided himself on adhering to ethical principles, yet did not hesitate to belittle those who worked for him. Among all the challenges, the hardest for Isabella was dealing with Marcia's constant disdain for Camilla. Unlike Isabella, who was there by choice and with a specific purpose, Camilla had no other option. She depended on that job to support her family, and it seemed had already gotten used to her boss's cold treatment. The young woman accepted Marcia's criticisms with a calm demeanor, but Isabella saw the sadness in her eyes, a look that reminded her of someone who had learned to swallow their own dreams and ambitions. There was a recurring scene that particularly pained Isabella. Every day, at the end of her tasks, Camilla would carefully check if everything was perfect, anticipating any comments from Marcia. It was as though she lived in a constant state of tension, trying to prevent any small slip-up from costing her another humiliating reprimand. With every disdainful glance and every contemptuous word, Isabella felt her own heart tighten with indignation and sorrow. At the same time, Isabella observed how Rodrigo, the absent son, was frequently mentioned by Marcia in a positive light, as if he were the epitome of perfection that she so valued. Rodrigo was the only one who seemed to escape his parents' coldness, and hearing his name brought Isabella temporary relief, as if he represented a connection to a different world where respect and empathy still existed. But Rodrigo's absence made everything more difficult, as she could not rely on his support and had to face the merciless treatment of his parents alone. In the days that followed, Isabella found strength in her mission to uncover the true character of the family. She decided to use this experience to, in some way, make a difference. Each harsh word, each cold gesture, and each veiled criticism only fueled her determination to derive something positive from the situation. After all, she was not there just to observe. She was there to understand and perhaps teach a lesson about respect and dignity. After days of enduring the indifference and contempt that Marcia and Carlos displayed toward the household staff, Isabella began to feel the weight of her disguise. She had spent an entire week living the reality of a domestic worker, facing humiliating situations and disdainful comments, all the while observing the cold, hierarchical interactions that permeated Rodrigo's family. At several moments, she questioned how far she could take this experience and when would be the right time to reveal her true identity. But at the same time, she felt she needed to continue until she fully grasped everything she wanted to know about the true nature of that family. One afternoon, while preparing Marcia's tea, Isabella overheard voices coming from the living room. It was Marcia's voice, filled with distrust and irritation, as if she were discussing something important with Rodrigo, who had returned from a business trip without Isabella's knowledge. The conversation caught her attention, and as she heated the water, she couldn't resist her curiosity and approached the door of the living room, staying out of sight. "I don't understand this Isabella of yours, Rodrigo," Marcia said in a cold tone. "All these successful women are the same. They pretend not to want anything, but they're always after money and status. You need to be careful." Isabella felt a tightness in her chest upon hearing those words. It was painful to know that Marcia saw her this way, reducing her journey and personality to stereotypes. Rodrigo, however, responded firmly, "Mom, Isabella isn't like that. She's incredible. She achieved everything on her own and doesn't need my money or my name. She's so much more than you think." There was pride and affection in his voice, and Isabella felt her heart warm for a brief moment. "That's what they all say in the beginning," Marcia retorted with a sarcastic laugh. "But just wait until she shows her true colors." Then Marcia changed her tone, seemingly distracted, and commented on the new maid that Rodrigo had supposedly hired to help around the house. Confused, Rodrigo interrupted, "Mom, I didn't suggest hiring anyone." There was an uncomfortable pause, and then Marcia, suddenly realizing what was happening, asked in a lower voice, filled with suspicion, Who do you think she is?" Tension filled the room. Isabella knew this was the moment. Without hesitation, she entered the living room with the tea tray in her hands. The sound of her footsteps caught the attention of both, who turned to face her, first with surprise, then with absolute shock. Rodrigo was stunned, his eyes wide with disbelief, while Marcia appeared unable to comprehend the situation, her face alternating between shock and the realization that she had made a grave mistake. With a calm demeanor and determined eyes, Isabella placed the tray on the coffee table and looked directly at Rodrigo, finally feeling free to be herself. "Surprise," she said with a slight smile, breaking the suffocating silence in the room. Rodrigo stepped toward her, still speechless, while Marcia covered her mouth with one hand, astonished by the situation. Marcia stammered, still unable to believe it. You are Isabella, Rodrigo's girlfriend." Her tone was now one of pure desperation, and Isabella nodded, maintaining a calm expression despite her racing heart. "Yes, it's me," she replied calmly. "I apologize for the misunderstanding, but I decided not to correct you when you mistook me for a worker. I thought it would be an interesting opportunity to get to know Rodrigo's family better, and perhaps understand how they treat people without the usual formalities." Rodrigo, recovering from the initial shock, approached Isabella and held her hands. "Isabella, I don't know what to say," he confessed, still wide-eyed. He appeared both proud and concerned, as if he couldn't fathom how she had endured everything that had happened. Isabella responded with a calm and understanding gaze. "It was a revealing experience, Rodrigo. I wanted to understand, without labels, the true environment of your family." Marcia, now visibly embarrassed, tried to justify herself, but no words seemed to make sense. Carlos, drawn by the commotion in the room, entered and stopped short upon realizing who the woman was that he had treated with condescension for days. Isabella turned to him, maintaining the firm demeanor he had not known until that moment. "Good afternoon, Mr. Almeida. I believe we haven't been properly introduced. I am Isabella Mendez, CEO of Innovatech Solutions and your son's girlfriend." Carlos stood frozen, speechless, while Rodrigo looked at Isabella with growing admiration. He seemed to realize that what she had done required a bravery he might not possess himself. It was as if, for the first time, he saw the true extent of her strength. "Isabella," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I can't imagine what you went through here, but I'm impressed and ashamed." Isabella looked at Rodrigo softly and replied, "It's not your fault, Rodrigo. In fact, I'm grateful for the experience. It allowed me to see things I might never have understood." Turning to Marcia and Carlos, she took a deep breath before continuing. "I didn't come here to cause embarrassment. I truly wanted to be part of this family and understand more about you, but what I experienced here brought to light a valuable lesson about prejudice and respect." Marcia was completely at a loss, unable to find words. She, who had always believed she had control over everything and everyone, was now at the mercy of the consequences of her own prejudice. Carlos, equally uncomfortable, remained silent, but his expression clearly showed regret and shame. In the corner of the room, Camilla had witnessed the scene and now looked at Isabella with tears in her eyes. To her, that revelation was like breaking an invisible barrier, proof that respect and acknowledgement were possible even in the most rigid environments. Isabella smiled at Camilla, gesturing for her to come closer. When the young woman approached, Isabella embraced her, and they exchanged looks of mutual understanding, as if the revelation of her true identity also signified a promise of change for Camilla. Rodrigo, feeling the weight of everything that had occurred, finally found the strength to speak. "Isabella, I couldn't be more proud. What you did was extraordinary. You had the courage to show us what no one else would dare to confront." He hugged her tightly, as if to assure her that nothing would hurt her anymore. At that moment, the atmosphere of the room transformed. Instead of the cold silence and judgmental glances that had prevailed before, there was now an air of redemption, vulnerability, and perhaps hope. Isabella knew that from this point on, nothing would be the same. And although the experience had been tough, she felt that the revelation had been worth it. Isabella's revelation as the CEO of Innovatech Solutions and Rodrigo's girlfriend deeply shook the foundations of the Almeida family. For days, the house remained in a state of uncomfortable introspection, with each family member seemingly engaged in a silent process of reflection and even self-criticism. The environment, once marked by coldness and formality, began to change gradually, propelled by the impactful experience that Isabella had provided through her presence. For Marcia, Rodrigo's mother, the change was the hardest. Her proud and sometimes arrogant demeanor had been built over years, solidified by a life of privilege and the belief that her social status made her superior to others. When she discovered that Isabella, the employee she had tolerated with disdain and prejudice, was actually a highly successful woman, Marcia felt humiliated and helpless, as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. She was forced to painfully recognize her own prejudices and the superficiality of her beliefs about class and hierarchy. In the days that followed, Marcia began to observe Camilla and the other household staff with a more attentive, less critical, and more empathetic eye. The embarrassment of being confronted by her own hypocrisy slowly led her to reflect on how she treated the employees. At one point, seeing Camilla cleaning the living room, something that would have seemed trivial before, Marcia approached her hesitantly and attempted for the first time a more respectful dialogue. "Camilla," she began in a gentler tone than usual, "you've been doing a good job. I've never said this, but I appreciate your hard work." The young woman was taken aback, as she had never received direct thanks from Marcia before. Though simple, those words represented a significant step for a woman who had until then limited herself to maintaining appearances without recognizing the human value of those around her. Carlos, Rodrigo's father, also found himself compelled to confront his own attitudes. Accustomed to viewing himself as a principled man, he prided himself on his library filled with books on ethics and leadership. However, Isabella's presence exposed the contradictions between what he believed and what he actually practiced. when he learned that he had treated with disdain a woman who understood ethics and social responsibility as well as he did, if not better. Carlos felt deeply ashamed. He realized that respect could not be just a theoretical concept, but a daily practice. For him, this realization became the starting point for internal change. He began to genuinely seek to know the people who worked for him, to listen to their stories, and to understand their needs. One morning, Carlos took the initiative to talk to Camila, starting a conversation that began with a simple question about her work. He learned more about the young woman's dreams and ambitions. "Camila, have you always wanted to work as a domestic worker?" he asked, in a tone almost humble. Camila, surprised, responded honestly, "No, sir. My dream has always been to study business administration, but opportunities are few." The response stirred something in Carlos, who began to see the young woman in a different light, understanding that each person there had their own story and dream, and perhaps he could help make it a reality. Camila, in turn, became the center of attention and admiration for Isabella, Rodrigo, and gradually for the entire family. Her kindness and determination had captivated Isabella from the start, but now, with the newfound respect from Marcia and Carlos, she finally felt she was no longer invisible in that house. For the first time in years, Camila began to believe that she might actually pursue her dream of studying and building a different career. The subtle change in the atmosphere gave her more confidence, making her feel that her work was truly valued. Rodrigo, the only one who had not treated Isabella with disrespect, also experienced profound personal growth. Witnessing Isabella's courage in maintaining her disguise and the determination with which she faced her family's treatment made him reevaluate his own attitudes. As a lawyer, he had always taken pride in fighting for justice, but now he saw that there was still much to be done to ensure that everyone, including his own family, understood the value of empathy and respect. He began to discuss with his parents the lessons Isabella had taught them all, encouraging them to treat people with the dignity they deserved. Rodrigo grew to admire his girlfriend's integrity and strength even more, realizing she could inspire deep changes, even in the most difficult people. For Isabella, the experience was even more transformative. Throughout the week she spent living as an employee, she revisited emotions and memories long buried. She recalled the struggles of her youth, the moments when she too had felt undervalued, which reinforced her gratitude for the path she had taken and the opportunity to help others. Her connection with Camila deepened, and she realized she could not simply leave that house and return to her normal life without doing something concrete for the young woman. Thus, she decided to offer Camila a scholarship and an internship at Innovatech Solutions, a gift that would completely change the young woman's life and help her reach the dream she so cherished. Isabella's decision was met with surprise and emotion from Camila, who had never imagined that someone in her position could one day have the chance to study at a university. Overwhelmed with tears, the young woman thanked Isabella with heartfelt sincerity. "I don't know what to say, Miss Isabella. This is more than I could ever dream of. You've changed my life." Isabella smiled in return, feeling that in some way her past and struggles had gained an even greater purpose. For the Almeida family, Isabella's presence and revelation marked the beginning of a learning and transformation process. What had once seemed like a house of inflexible values and limited views was beginning to evolve into a home where respect and empathy could flourish. Marcia and Carlos still had a long way to go, but the impact of the experience was undeniable, and they no longer viewed their employees in the same way. Camila, who had long been invisible to them, was now treated with respect, and her work, once undervalued, gained new meaning. Each gesture, each small word of gratitude and recognition reflected the growth journey each person was undertaking. Rodrigo and Isabella, for their part, further strengthened their relationship, which was now built not only on love and admiration, but also on a deep understanding of the life lessons they had shared. They knew that this experience had united them in a unique way, and that together they could build a life based on solid values and the ability to see beyond appearances. For them, This revelation was not just a testament to love, but a demonstration that with courage and empathy, it is possible to transform the world around us, starting with those closest to us. The personal growth of each family member became a milestone, a reminder that true worth does not lie in status, but in how one treats others. Isabella's experience in the Almeida household brought to light a powerful lesson about respect, humility, and the need to see people for who they truly are, not just for how they appear. The impact of her decision to live as an employee in that house, without revealing her true identity, was profound for both her and Rodrigo's family. The story illustrates that a person's value is not determined by their status or social position, but by how they treat others, especially those in vulnerable or less privileged positions. Throughout her life, Isabella had learned to fight for her dreams and overcome numerous obstacles to reach the top of her career. But this experience, where she was treated with coldness and disdain, reminded her of where she came from and all the barriers she had faced. She realized that although she had gained respect and recognition in the business world, there was still a part of her that never forgot what it felt like to be underestimated and judged by appearance or social standing. This memory further reinforced her compassion and determination to transform the lives of those around her. The central message Isabella wanted to convey through her experience was clear. Respect should not be a privilege reserved for a few, but a basic right that everyone deserves, regardless of their background, work, or status. On several occasions in that house, she observed harsh comments and disdainful glances, immediate judgment, and prejudiced assumptions. Each detail revealed how people tend to view others through a lens of superiority, often without realizing they are treating a human being with feelings, dreams, and untapped potential. By masquerading as an employee, Isabella also aimed to expose how prejudice can be deeply rooted in the most subtle daily interactions. Marcia and Carlos were polite and proud of their social status, but that politeness and pride translated into a dehumanizing coldness that she gradually uncovered through her disguise. Marcia, by referring to her simply as a helper, failed to see Isabella the person but only a function, a service. Carlos, judging her condescendingly for her curiosity about ethics books, viewed her merely as an uneducated girl, rather than someone with a thirst for knowledge. Through this experience, Isabella wanted to convey a message that a person's true worth cannot be measured by possessions or titles, but by their capacity for empathy and kindness. She understood that her material success would not define her integrity. What truly mattered was her willingness to see and value others, whether they were a colleague, a family member, or someone from a different social background. By revealing this reality to Rodrigo, her parents, and especially to Camila, Isabella became a living example of how small acts of empathy can create powerful change. Another important point in Isabella's message was the capacity for redemption. The experience at the Almeida household not only exposed the family's flaws and prejudices, but also offered everyone a chance for growth and change. Marcia and Carlos, by confronting the discomfort of having their prejudices laid bare, were able to look inward and reflect on their attitudes. The embarrassment and shame they felt upon realizing they had treated someone indignantly sparked a process of genuine transformation. This showed that no matter how ingrained certain behaviors may be, there is always an opportunity to change, provided there is a willingness to acknowledge one's own mistakes and learn from them. Isabella's story also touches on another fundamental aspect: the power of forgiveness and second chances. Even after being mistreated and underestimated, Isabella chose not to harbor resentment, but instead to give Rodrigo's family the opportunity to evolve. Her stance demonstrated that forgiveness is an act of courage, and that by choosing not to carry grudges, she not only liberated herself, but also offered them a chance to build healthier, more authentic relationships. Finally, the message of the video connects with an important reflection on the impact each person can have on another's life. By helping Camila pursue her dream of studying business administration, Isabella illustrated how a simple act of generosity and empathy can change someone's destiny. She knew what it was like to fight for a place and wanted to provide the young woman with the opportunity opportunity she herself had to seek with great effort. The scholarship and internship were more than just practical assistance. They were a promise of a new life for Camilla, a chance for her to see that her dreams were also valid and attainable. Isabella's story thus concludes with an inspiring message of love and compassion. It invites viewers to reflect on their own attitudes and how they treat those around them. After all, the respect and kindness we extend to others say more about who we are than any achievement or title we may hold. With this message, Isabella hopes her experience motivates others to view the world with greater empathy and to ask themselves, am I treating others with the dignity they deserve? The lesson is that everyone deserves a chance to be seen and respected for who they are, and that love and kindness are transformative forces that can make the world a better place. Isabella's experience in the Almeida household brings a profound reflection on how our society often organizes and defines relationships among people. By living the life of an employee, Isabella saw firsthand how class prejudice remains a constant reality, expressed not only in words, but also through small gestures, glances, and judgments that shape the daily lives of many. This experience showed her, and all who witnessed her story, that a person's value should never be determined by their social position or role, but by the respect, dignity, and character of each individual. Isabella, being a successful woman, had the privilege of observing the situation from the outside and had the choice to reveal her true identity. But what about those who live in such conditions daily, without the power to change their circumstances with a simple revelation? Camilla, for instance, could not help but feel underestimated, trapped in a life of servitude and invisibility, where her dreams and talents went unnoticed and ignored. Her story reflects the reality of many who, despite having aspirations and abilities, are limited by judgment and the indifferent treatment of a society that still values status more than human essence. By inviting the viewer to reflect on this issue, the video raises essential questions. How do we see and treat those around us? Is the respect we offer someone conditional on their position or appearance? And in our everyday lives, how often do we overlook the qualities and dreams of those we consider lesser or simple? Isabella's story serves as an invitation for each person to examine their own, often invisible prejudices and confront attitudes that may be discriminatory, even if unconsciously. Another aspect that Isabella's experience addresses is the hypocrisy of many societal values and discourses. Carlos, the patriarch of the Almeida family, maintained a vast collection of books on ethics and social responsibility, yet he failed to practice these principles with those who worked in his own home. This contradiction highlights how, in our society, there exists a significant gap between what we preach as values and what we actually practice. Many speak of equality and respect, but in practice they ignore these principles when interacting with people from different social conditions, revealing a silent and systemic prejudice that permeates even the most educated and seemingly conscious households. Isabella's story also emphasizes how opportunities are not distributed equally and how often those with less access to resources and education end up stigmatized and underestimated. Camilla, with her desire to study and progress, represents all those who possess potential but lack the opportunity to grow. Isabella's simple act of offering her a scholarship and internship was a way to show that, with the right support, anyone can realize their potential. This action not only transformed Camilla's life, but also highlighted the role everyone can play in providing opportunities and recognizing talent where it is often overlooked. The reflection goes beyond the family environment. Society as a whole tends to create invisible barriers between people, whether in schools, workplaces, or social circles. There is a tendency to treat those with status and wealth with greater deference, while those in humbler positions are often marginalized and disrespected. This behavior, albeit subtle in many cases, has a profound impact, perpetuating a cycle of devaluation and lack of opportunities. Furthermore, Isabella's story prompts a reflection on the true meaning of success. In modern society, success is often equated with material possessions and social status. Isabella, despite achieving this type of success, discovered that true value lies in her ability to connect with and transform the lives of those around her. For her, the moment of greatest fulfillment was not her financial success, but rather the opportunity to offer Camilla a chance for change and simultaneously inspire Rodrigo's family to become more aware and empathetic. The story invites viewers to rethink their own attitudes and develop a more sensitive and attentive outlook towards others. It suggests that perhaps true transformation doesn't come from grand gestures, but from small acts of respect and empathy in daily life. If each person can reflect on how their own actions affect others, on how they treat those around them, and on the impact they can have in someone's life, society can gradually become more just and inclusive. Isabella's message is clear. Everyone deserves respect, recognition, and the opportunity to grow, regardless of their circumstances. Each person has a story, dreams, and potentials that should be valued. This story serves not only as a lesson for Rodrigo's family, but for all those in positions of privilege who have the capacity to make a difference in someone else's life. Respect, kindness, and generosity are the true riches one can possess, and it is these values that can genuinely transform the world. After intense and transformative days in the Almeida household, Isabella finally revealed herself fully, both to Rodrigo's family and to herself. Her experience disguised as a domestic worker had been more than a test or a curiosity. It was a journey of self-discovery, empathy, and courage that inspired everyone around her. By exposing herself to the realities of prejudice and indifference, Isabella not only gained a new understanding of the true meaning of respect and humanity, but also planted the seeds of change in a family that had never been confronted with these issues so starkly. Isabella's story and the transformation she brought to the Almeida household represent a powerful reminder of the potential each of us has to promote good. On the day of her departure, there was a sense of hope lingering in the house, as if the simple fact that Isabella had shown compassion and strength could inspire everyone to rethink their attitudes and strive to be better. Marcia and Carlos, now more aware of their own shortcomings, promised themselves they would change the way they viewed and treated others. Rodrigo, in turn, saw in Isabella not just a companion, but a woman he deeply admired for her courage, with whom he wished to build a life based on true and solid values. Isabella's journey leaves an inspiring message about the importance of love and respect, and how both can be catalysts for personal and social transformation. She demonstrated that no one should be judged by their appearance, position, or origin, and that each person carries a unique story and potential. What society often overlooks is the ability to see beyond first impressions, to perceive the true essence of each individual, and to value their dignity as a human being. Through her resilient and generous demeanor, Isabella teaches that a person's worth is not defined by their social standing, but by the strength of their character and their willingness to make a difference in others' lives. As Isabella left the Almeida household, she felt that her goal had been accomplished. She knew she had made a real impact and, more importantly, inspired the family to rethink their attitudes and rebuild their relationships. In her heart, she held the pride of knowing that she had provided Camilla with a chance to pursue her dreams, and that, over time, Marcia and Carlos could open up to a more humane and just coexistence with everyone around them. The transformation Isabella had initiated was like a circle that would gradually expand, generating more understanding and empathy. As she bid farewell to Rodrigo, he held her hands and looked at her with tenderness and respect. "You changed my life and my family's, Isabella," he said. "I never imagined that someone could have the courage and compassion that you've shown. Thank you for showing us the way." Isabella smiled, feeling deeply grateful for the experience. "I just hope this change continues to grow, Rodrigo. All I did was plant a seed. Now it's up to each of us to nurture it so that it can flourish. Adieu." With that final exchange of glances, they said goodbye, ready to build a future together based on the values of respect, empathy, and love that Isabella had always carried with her. For them, true wealth was not professional success or material achievements, but the power to transform and inspire lives. As she departed, Isabella knew she was taking with her a valuable lesson, something that would always guide her decisions and actions. That true change begins when each of us takes responsibility for treating others with dignity and kindness. Thus, the video ends with an invitation for the viewer to reflect on their own attitudes and choices. Isabella's story leaves a legacy of hope, showing that with a simple act of empathy, it is possible to positively impact the world around us. She inspires us to see the potential for transformation that exists within every person, to look beyond appearances, and to build a future where respect is the foundation of all relationships. May Isabella's example remind us that true wealth lies in the character, courage, and compassion with which we choose to live our lives, and that together we can create a better world, one act of kindness at a time.